think the Knicks are going to win the NBA championship. Not because they have the best player, not because they're necessarily the most overwhelming talented team. In fact, I think the Spurs actually have the best player in the series, but the Knicks are playing the best basketball in the history of the world right now. They've won 11 straight games. They've dominated opponents in historical fashion. Everybody understands their role. And after analyzing every single matchup, every adjustment, every storyline, I got the Knicks in 6. Today, we're going to go above the noise on the NBA Finals. Welcome back to Above the Noise. I'm your host, Damani Adams. This is the show where we go beyond the headlines and break down the biggest stories in sports with context, analysis, and perspective. Today, we're going to go above the noise on the NBA Finals, why this series is much closer than people think, while Karl-Anthony Towns may be the biggest swing factor in the entire matchup, along with Mitchell Robinson, whether Victor Wembanyama or Jalen Brunson is actually the best player in the series, and why I believe the Knicks are just 4 wins away from an NBA championship. Let's get into it. Let's start the way we always do, by going above the noise. Who's actually the best player in this series? Is it Wemby or is it Brunson? If we're talking pure basketball talent, obviously the answer is Victor Wembanyama. I don't think that's too controversial. He's the best player in this series off of that metric. But when we factor in things like experience, time in the league, when I say experience, I mean like playoff experience specifically, Brunson is all-encompassing the best player in this series. Now, Wemby's ceiling is, I believe, way higher, but that's where the experience and the previous factors I mentioned come into play that are the intangibles as to why Brunson, on most nights in this series, likely will be the best player. Now, don't get me wrong, Wemby is a generational talent, defensive game changer. His offensive ceiling is super high, and he can impact every single possession, whether he touches the ball or he doesn't. But to me, I feel like his offense is a little bit too inconsistent for him to be dependent on right now as the end-all be-all for the Spurs. Their offense doesn't necessarily thrive through him, but whenever he is on offensively, it puts him in a whole nother stratosphere. He really averages only about like 24, 25 points and he plays relatively high 20s, low 30s in the minutes, points per game on the regular. But this series, I believe they're going to need him to be way better than that. He's going to have 4 great games, and even one of those great games, they still might end up losing. So I think Wemby offensively is going to be a key, and I don't think he'll consistently be better than Brunson in this series. Now, obviously, Wemby's Wemby, we established that. But if we're just talking about who I trust more in the fourth quarter of a close game, especially if it's a Game 7 environment, the answer is Brunson. Everybody's better than Brunson until it's time to be better than Brunson. Say it with me. Everybody's better than Brunson until it's time to be better than Brunson. His experience, his leadership, his toughness, his conditioning, his endurance, his composure. Man, I feel like every game he gets hurt at least 1, 2, 3 times, goes to the back, they got spare body parts for him, give him a new knee, give him a new ankle, or put some horse semen in him, and he's just right back out there. And honestly, he plays better when he's hurt. He's one of those guys where his pain tolerance is super high, and he has that Luka gene in him to where when you piss him off, he just goes with a vengeance extra hard on you. And even though he's literally like 6'2", 6'1", he plays well above that. Pound for pound, he might be the best player in the NBA, low-key. And the thing about Brunson, too, is he did it through consistency, relentless hard work, and just trying to go above the noise, break through it, and continue to be his best self. He really grinded to get to where he was. Every single thing that he is now, he was not. Wemby's obviously the more talented player, but right now, I'm taking Brunson. Now, a lot of people are confused or surprised about the Knicks and their ascension to the NBA Finals. But honestly, I don't think enough people realize how much Karl-Anthony Towns' impact has actually changed his team and ignited the winning streak. Before the switch in the first round, Brunson was doing a lot of the dominating of the ball handling. Players was just more so standing around the perimeter. It was a dribble, and now I pass it to you and you got to make something happen, or I'm in a bad situation. And I feel like also too, the offense became really predictable. And it's a lot already to ask Jalen Brunson to be your franchise player, your number one guy, your go-to offensive guy, and he's so small. So he has to work that much harder for a bucket than the average NBA player per possession. And when you add in all that dribbling, yeah, it's fun, but it's not a sustainable method to win a championship. By moving Cat to the point forward position and putting him in the high post, which was a key adjustment, that opened up the offense more, allowed more ball movement, allowed players to become more involved in the offense instead of just standing there on the perimeter. Jalen Brunson also was able to preserve his energy. He was able to use his energy more smartly in the key moments towards the end of the games and have some more in the tank, because last year you saw a lot of times where Brunson would be on, and of course he fights through it. He has that fatigue badge in 2K where a tireless scorer, and you could see he was trying to will himself through the fatigue. Now, of course, you still might have those moments, but for the most part, he has a little bit less on his plate, I would say. Another element to that was it allowed Karl-Anthony Towns specifically to be more involved in the offense. A lot of times, they weren't really utilizing him to the best of his abilities, because when Brunson had the ball, they would do pick and rolls, pick and pops and stuff, but they wouldn't necessarily use Cat as the franchise player he once was to run the offense through him, expose that mismatch on offense, and make his guy work. Because on the other end, although sometimes Cat can get into foul trouble, if you were making your guy work on one end, on the other end, he doesn't have as much energy to exert in order to get you in those foul troubles. So between that and then also Cat locking down on the stupid fouls on defense, it still happens time to time, but I feel like he's cut down that volume at a high clip. Those are two huge keys. And Karl-Anthony Towns, he's the type of guy where you have to keep him in the offense. You have to keep him going. You have to keep his morale included and elevated so that he can play his best ball. He is one of those guys where once he sees the ball goes through the net, he sees that he's involved in the game and the game has a flow. He figured it out. That's when he's at his best, because then he's able to be in rhythm, move around, not think too much, and just play free. When he plays free, he's a beast. There was about a 3 to 5 year span where every GM in the NBA said if they had the number 1 overall pick of any player in the NBA, they would pick Karl-Anthony Towns to build the team around. And he's showing it why. I believe once he came to the Knicks, that was the championship piece that they needed. Julius Randle had to go. But yeah, between him and Alvarado, I think those were the pieces that really put this Knicks team over the top and gave them what we see now. The Knicks did way more than just adjust their offense. I think they unlocked Karl-Anthony Towns, and he is the reason why I believe they are over the hump to win the championship. Outside of New York, most people are picking the Spurs because of Wemby primarily. They have the generational player on their team. A lot of casuals are just on a name recognition basis, where once they know and identify that player, they'll just ride with him. Honestly, if it wasn't the Knicks, I would pick the Spurs as well. I love Wemby. I thought going into the season that their ceiling was the Western Conference Finals, and they honestly exceeded even my expectations of making the finals. I thought it was on the board, but I didn't think that it was a guarantee and a lock to happen. So while I understand that some people may view Spurs as a more talented team, I think a lot of people are overlooking the Knicks and what they've become and who they've been. They're on an insane heater, a historic playoff run with the widest point gaps in NBA history. They've blown out all their opponents in historical margins. Closeout games with the Cavs and the Hawks, they put them boys on a guillotine and just chopped their heads off. 5 minutes into the game, it was over. They quit and they wanted no more begging for mercy. Honestly had me thinking that Adam Silver should implement a mercy rule to the NBA, because that was crazy. In addition to that, their team chemistry is at an all-time high. They're peaking at the right time. Everyone's in their defined roles. They know exactly what their job is when they enter the building. And that is a sign of any championship team. Whether you actually win it or you get to the finals, you need to have understanding and clarity as far as the hierarchy and where things stand. A lot of people have been saying that the Knicks' path was easier than the Spurs. The Spurs face harder competition, so the Spurs will obviously win because they're more battle tested, whereas the Knicks, this could just be an anomaly because, one, they're playing like the greatest team in NBA history, literally, and one of the greatest playoff win streaks in NBA history going into a finals, besides, I believe, the 2017 Warriors. Let me just fact check that real quick. Yeah, it was the 2017 Warriors. They did 12, the longest winning streaks entering the NBA Finals since the playoff expansion in 1984. 12 by the 2017 Warriors, that is the record. 11 in a row by the Knicks, and tied at 11 was the 01 Lakers and the 89 Lakers, which are two of the greatest teams of all time. The Knicks literally are on a list with 3 of the greatest teams of all time going into the finals. And the only team that didn't win the chip of those are the Lakers in 89. Do with that what you may. The Spurs defense is elite. Now, finishing off the earlier point, the Spurs defense is elite. And I don't think the Knicks have faced anything like them. To me, I compare them to like the old to 2000 Ravens or like the Buccaneers from the early 2000s. You got Stephon Castle up front and then Wemby just playing free safety. It should be a little bit tougher for the Knicks to score, but I believe they still have enough to get it done. Just have to have Wemby outside of the paint and make him exert his energy and work on defense and move around. Because a lot of times people respect him too much to the point where they don't attack the paint. They don't even really play offense how they usually do out of respect for how he can block and alter a shot. But I believe the Knicks need to have Wemby guarding Cat, whoever Wemby's guarding, that man has to spread the floor. He has to move outside the paint. He has to move around. He has to cause Wemby to work, think, move his head. Because if he's on the perimeter, he can't rebound. He can't really help that much unless he's in the corner. Now, he has great recovery, so it doesn't necessarily matter where he is. But if you can get him in specific spots on the perimeter, it will elongate the recovery time enough to where somebody can drive, kick, score, and do things that they normally wouldn't. So I believe in the Knicks. Mike Brown showed that he's good at adjusting, and they're all smart guys, high IQ guys. The Knicks usually do try to hunt defenders, and the thing that I'm worried about with the Spurs is that they won't have many guys to hunt. Of course, you'll get creative, you'll figure it out, you'll see what guy actually plays up to what standard when the time actually comes in the finals. But going into it, that's one thing that has me kind of, a little bit wary. Now, my X factors, I've already explained some of the reasons why I believe Karl-Anthony Towns is an X factor. His offensive versatility, his spacing, his playmaking, his pace. Mitchell Robinson is another name that I mentioned in the opening, and I believe he is going to be another huge reason why the Knicks win if they do win. His rebounding, his rim protection, his physicality, extra possessions, just making Wemby work, just make him breathe heavy, lean on him during dead balls, make him feel your presence, put a body on him, put an arm on him. You aren't taller than him, but you're stronger than him, so use that to your advantage. With Karl-Anthony Towns, his spacing, like I said, keeping Wemby away from the basket, him being aggressive on offense, making Wemby actually work. Wemby is a great defender, obviously defensive player of the year, but we've seen if guys go at him consistently, just like any shot blocker, they're going to get in foul trouble eventually. They're going to tire down, and they'll have less to use on offense, which is, like I said, where I believe Wemby puts the Spurs over the top once he has big offensive games. If Karl-Anthony Towns can help minimize, or if Karl-Anthony Towns can maximize his offensive output, that can help minimize Wemby's defensive output in combination with Mitchell Robinson's physical presence on him, and then Cat can give him a breather on defense as well. So I think if New York is going to win the series, those two players are going to have the best series and the best stretch of games of their entire freaking lives. Karl-Anthony Towns, honestly, is going to have to play so good that he's going to be in finals MVP contention. Like, I'm not even talking about just he's on the team, he's the second best player, so he might be in contention. I'm talking about like when Steph and Andrew Wiggins was a debate. That's what I mean. As mentioned, the Knicks are on an insane heater. And one thing that makes me nervous is anytime a team is this hot for this long, they're due for a comeback to earth game. I don't know if it's going to be game one. I don't know if it's going to be game two. Hey, it may not ever happen this series at all. They might just keep it going, and we look back at it as one of, if not the greatest run to a championship in NBA history. But I believe they probably will be due for a loss sooner than later. I predict that'll be game two that they lose. I don't know if it'll be a blowout. I don't know if it'll be a close one. For the Spurs, though, I think for their confidence, they need to blow the Knicks out in one of the first two games, I would say. Maybe three, but game three might be too late, depending on how game two goes. So the Spurs, they got to make their mark, especially you saw how Wemby was reacting after the Western Conference Finals. And yeah, the way I had this series going was Knicks take game one, Spurs take game two, Knicks take game three, Spurs take game four. It's 2-2, and then the Knicks finish in amount of 6. Honestly, though, game three can go either way. It can be, I believe for sure it'd be 1-1, and then game three can go either way. So that's why I just really have it 1-1, 2-2, 4-2 Knicks. But I could also see it going 1-1, 3-1, 4-2 Knicks. Now, who has more pressure in this matchup? I feel like usually it's pretty apparent who has the most pressure. Whoever has a team with the overwhelmingly best player, or whoever is just simply the most overwhelming favorite, has the pressure to win. But this time, I feel like it's a lot more even regarding the pressure than the previous years. For both teams, of course, there's pressure. Anytime you're in the finals, you have pressure to make it because you want to seize your opportunity. You never know how many or a little more of these you have, if you'll even have another one in the future. Many players get there once early, you think, oh, they'll be back. Never happen again. Some players get there later in their career, you're like, okay, this team is pretty good. He might be back again next year, maybe not, but you just never know, man. You can never take it for granted. LeBron James, 22 years old, he carried the Cavs to the NBA Finals, and everyone was like, oh, shoot, 7, his third year, he'll be back. He'll definitely be back many more times. Now, he did end up going back many more times, 10 finals in total, 8 straight in 9 and 10 years. But it took him leaving the Cavs to go to Miami to make another finals. And then when he came back then he didn't go to another finals again with the Cavs until he came back in 2015, which was almost 8 years later. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the Bucks. He took the Bucks to the finals. Everyone was like, oh, he'll be back. This is young. He's super early. I believe he was like 23, 24. He never went back until he left to go to the Lakers. Never won until he left to go to the Lakers again. So we've seen throughout history, even Giannis Antetokounmpo a couple years ago, when he went, everyone, including myself, was like, oh, he's going to be back. The league is on notice. It's Giannis' time now because he's a pantheon player type, all-time great. And he hasn't been back since. Barely even won playoff series since. So it's something that you can't really take for granted. You gotta seize the moment, seize the opportunity. If the Knicks haven't won a championship in 53 years, they haven't even made the finals since 1999, which was almost 30 years ago. And the fact that they're even here is just so crazy. The Knicks, of course, New York expects them to win. We want them to win. We're rooting for them to win. But this is already beyond a lot of people's wildest imaginations and dreams. Of course, we want to finish the job. We want to get this done and seal the deal to hoist that Larry O'Brien. If the Knicks win, this would be arguably the greatest title in NBA history. This would be an iconic title. This is probably the longest as far as big markets and popular teams are concerned. This is one of the biggest championship droughts in history, in sports history. MLB, soccer, NFL, NBA, doesn't matter. The closest thing that I can compare this to as far as NBA streaks was when LeBron broke the curse. It was like 50-something years for Cavs of chips. And this is New York. Everything's bigger in New York. So while we don't have a LeBron James, this is the Garden, the Mecca of New York. It's going to be a huge deal, super magnified. And if they pull this off, I promise you, if they pull this off, New York might burn down. They really might burn to the ground. Now for the Spurs, their pressure comes from them having the most generational player, which is Wemby. Generational / best. They have home court advantage, and to some people, they have a talent advantage. To me, I still think the Knicks are a better team, but to some, the Spurs are clearly the better team. Also, in the history of the Spurs, they're 6-0 in game ones. They've never lost. They've never trailed a series at any point in the NBA Finals besides when they lost in 7 to Miami Heat with LeBron. And they just have a model of consistent greatness and winning. So with all that being said, this honestly feels like the most 50-50 as far as NBA Finals pressure to win it. It's not like we have a LeBron going against a lesser team or an equal team fighting for his legacy. It's not like we have a Giannis going against the Suns or Steph in 2022 going against the young Celtics. So yeah, neither team is carrying overwhelming pressure. Neither team is carrying overwhelming pressure, but they're both carrying opportunity to seize the moment. And that leads me to, what is the better story for the NBA? If Adam Silver could secretly pick a champion, who would it be? What does the script say? Now for the Knicks, it's Madison Square Garden, championship is in New York, the marketing, the ad dollars, historic fan base, just the impact of the role, just the impact of the role that New York plays and the Garden plays in sports history. The most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden. And it's a massive market, the biggest market in the world. This would go insane for the NBA. The NBA is always better when the big market teams such as the Lakers and the Knicks are winning. And it's been my entire life, basically, since the Knicks have been this realm of winning. When they had Carmelo Anthony, they won a playoff series, and that was the first that they won since they got to the finals in 99. And I believe that was 2014 when they won the series. And this would be a whole new level. Now for the Spurs, Wemby's the future and the league's next phase of the NBA. So him winning this now will put him in an unprecedented situation. He would win a championship before LeBron, Magic, Michael, Kareem, everybody that is considered the pantheon greats, top 5, top 10 of the NBA. That will put him on an insane trajectory. Going into the draft, a lot of people said he had a GOAT ceiling. Chris Broussard even mentioned that his floor was Hakeem Olajuwon. If he wins this championship, first of all, the fact that he's even here right now is already a huge accomplishment, up there with the likes of LeBron and Kareem, 2 of the 3 greatest players of all time. If he wins this before they did, honestly, the league is going to be in for some tough 10, 15 years, hopefully. In theory, Wemby is going to have a lot more opportunities to get back to the finals, a lot of opportunities to be in championship contention. He's going to only get better. This is probably the worst version of Wemby that we'll ever see. And it's just going to be uphill as far as his talent and his understanding of the game and his conditioning from here. Wemby could wait. The Knicks need this now. Let's seize it. This is going to be historic. Now, if Jalen Brunson win this championship, his place in Knicks history is forever cemented and solidified. To me, he immediately becomes a Mount Rushmore lock on the Knicks. Willis Reed, Clyde Frazier, Jalen Brunson, Patrick Ewing. To me, he also elevates to the greatest Knick of all time, because this would be the most iconic ring, the best ring, the most earned and felt ring. Like, this one ring alone is worth 50 rings for the city, and just for his legacy. Brunson won't have to do anything. He won't have to pay for anything in New York. He's a made man. He's good. Do you know how many people are willing to die for Brunson in New York? You'll be surprised. My final verdict before we wrap today's episode: the Spurs have the generational player. The Knicks have the best momentum. Spurs have the future. Knicks feel like they're living in the moment. I think New York still is one of the first 2 games on the road. This actually works out to their advantage that they don't have home court advantage coming into it, because I believe that they'll steal it. I think the series comes back to New York tied, with all the pressure on the Spurs to win Game 3. And ultimately, I think the experience, chemistry, momentum will win out. The Spurs can absolutely win this series. Don't get me wrong. That is not off the board. And I wouldn't be shocked if they do. But you're asking my prediction? Knicks in 6. So those are my NBA Finals predictions. Let me know who you got winning the championship and how many games it'll take. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and just share with any other sports fans you know in your life. Anybody you know that may be a casual or a diehard. Until next time, above the noise.